let's talk about Cosby being an alleged but actual rapist.
Yeah, it's still alleged, isn't it?
Yeah, but also he did probably definitely rape people.
It's crazy, really. This one sort of took me by surprise. Because I'm a big stand-up comedy fan, I would say. I'm a big comedy fan in general. And while Bill Cosby isn't, I've never thought of him as like an incredible world-class comic. So many comedians have been like, well, the first album I ever listened to was a Cosby album.
Yeah. You can really see that he's influenced it.
And he was, you know, almost a pillar of stand-up comedy. People list him amongst, you know, your Lenny Bruces and your Carlins and your Pryors.
Pryors, yeah.
Some of the, like, best comedians ever.
Yeah.
And he was just about to have a new special released on Netflix.
It's been suspended, hasn't it?
He had a new show that was about to be released on NBC, I think.
A new show, didn't he? Like a sitcom?
I think to mark 30 years since the Cosby Show started, something. He's given like 6 episodes of something. Right. And now, here we are. It's all come out of nowhere. Well, not come out of nowhere. It was Hannibal Buress, wasn't it?
Yeah. I watched the clip before we started recording. Have you seen it?
I have seen it, but not for a couple of weeks. But didn't he basically, you know, call him out and say, Google that shit?
Yeah, basically. He was talking about how Cosby he was talking about how he preaches all the time and how he's always like, black people should pull their trousers up and be a responsible black person and all that. And he's like, oh, I don't swear on stage. Yeah, but you are a rapist and all that. And it's like, the crowd is laughing, like not exactly sure if he's being serious. And then he's like, Google it. That's real.
It's interesting that I've seen a lot of that since all this has come out. Black people saying that, you know, Bill Cosby is sort of a tool of, you know, white supremacy. That's a bit extreme, obviously, but he's very preaching. He's very, black people should be like this. All his comedy, you know, it's very clean. There's no cursing. There's no piss.
He's been a role model, hasn't he? That was like his place for a long time.
He seemed to be, that sort of elder statesman.
Yeah.
He almost the opposite of a sort of Richard Pryor, who was very open and honest and
very counterculture.
Yeah, very counterculture, very extreme.
Yeah.
Even off stages, you know, very drugs and women and his background. Whereas Bill Cosby is everything but that. And so all these allegations, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't know any of these allegations. I mean, I'm looking at a timeline here. They date back to like 2002.
Yeah, like a decade old, these allegations.
I didn't know that he settled out of court, etc. And it's all...
People just forgot about it, I guess.
It's all just blown up in the past month or so. And his silence is sort of speaking volumes, I think.
Yeah, because like have you seen all these interviews with him?
Yeah, where he doesn't even say anything, just shakes his head.
Yeah, shakes his head, or he says like, I expected more of your integrity and all that shit.
Yeah, he turned it around. He turned it around on somebody, didn't he? I can't remember who it was.
It was the AP interview, the Associated Press interview. And like, imagine if I interviewed you and I said to you, so have you raped 24 people? What would your response be?
I'm shaking my head here, and I'm saying that I expected more of this Skype call.
I mean, I've never raped anyone, obviously. And if you asked me if I had, I'd be like, no. I'd categorically say, no, I definitely haven't. I wouldn't just like avoid the question and say, I'm not even going to dignify that with an answer.
To most people,
yes.
You could look into it and go, well, he's trying to, you know, he's not saying anything for this reason, that reason. But for most people, if you're, like you say, if I say something ludicrous to you that is, you know, an allegation and thus you believe is a lie, of course, you're supposed to jump and defend it. You're supposed to show some emotion. Even if he just said, look, this is ludicrous, but when the time's right, I'll talk about it. But the complete silence almost just seems like guilt, almost just seems like if I don't say anything, it'll go away.
Yeah.
Like when your parents catch you with, like, porn, and you're like, I don't...
Well, I mean, after these interviews, like, the camera was still rolling on one of those interviews, and he was saying how, he was basically saying, like, you've got to edit that out. You've got to
get rid of that, cut that out.
So, obviously, he didn't intend for this to be...
Didn't intend
for silence to be his actual position. But
it's quite a lot weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the timeline here. 2004, January, allegedly gave somebody herbal pills to ease anxiety, touched her breasts and vaginal area, rubbed his penis against the hand, digitally penetrated her. I don't know what that means.
Fingers.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
I've done that in the past, but not against their will.
Yeah, consensually.
Yes, consensually, digitally penetration.
Are you up for some consensual digital penetration? Yes, please.
And then a year later, accused him of inappropriate touching. Yeah.
Yeah.
2005, ABC said might have been consensual.
What?
And then 2005,
probably not really.
Another person said drugged and sexually assaulted her. But he settled out of court, didn't he, with some of these people? I think somebody went public and sued him for it, civil suit.
Right.
And he settled out of court, as I believed, 13 other women were set to testify. In November 2006, it went to civil court in 2005. And he, just as these 13 other women were about to step forward and testify, he settled out of court with this person.
I mean, that's really blatant. So he's basically saying, look, I'll give you loads of money if you shut up.
Well, I think he would have tried to fight it and throw his money at it. He must be a rich guy.
Yeah.
But then as soon as the numbers started coming forward, he was like, right, just pay him off.
Yeah, yeah.
I never like when people settle out of court. It always makes me feel uneasy.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
It's like Michael Jackson did it. He settled out of court in his whole sexual abuse trial. And I was like,
It's like money is more important than justice.
Yeah. And that's a sad, sort of sad allegation. Well, sad part of society. Yeah.
It is quite unsettling, you're right. I mean, this whole thing is unsettling, especially since he used drugs, didn't he? He basically roofied people. Which
is a weird way to do it. Especially as well, as I imagine, in the 70s, you're Bill fucking Cosby. That's 45 years ago. You'd be in his early 30s.
Yeah, so he would have been able to get laid without having to roofie people, which means that I think, what he was doing was not about having sex. It was about it's just evil, really. It's just about being a dickhead.
Did you see that shortly after the Hannibal Buress thing went viral, his PR team, they tried to sort of battle the bad press they launched an online meme generator?
Yeah.
People just made them all about rape. And so
I've got some of them. Do you want me to read some of them out?
Yeah, do it.
One of them says, I've been accused of rape by 13 different women. The one that he tweeted out just says, Happy Monday. I don't think he really knows what a meme is. One of them says, this is working out great. I mean rape. I mean great. I mean, they're not particularly funny.
Yeah, they're not great.
Remember when I raped that girl? Neither does she. That one's got a lot of text. I'm not going to read that. My two favourite things, Jello pudding and rape. Stare directly at the sweater. You're getting very sleepy. I mean, they're not the epitome of wit, but they are basically you're a rapist, Bill Cosby. That's the good thing about the transparency of new media, like the internet. People can just have their say publicly. People can just say, well, you're a rapist. Imagine in the 70s or whatever, if he raped someone, what recourse does she have really? She doesn't really have anywhere to go, to have a voice.
Well, that's
but now
the thing, isn't it?
Make a YouTube video.
He's also one of the biggest stars in the world, 40 years. To this day, he's still a huge name.
Yeah.
And we saw it with the Jimmy Savile thing over here. You get to a point where you're almost untouchable. And if you say anything about anybody of that nature, especially when it's a long time in the past and very hard to prove, it's very, very likely you'll just get, mocked and laughed at and ignored.
Yeah. Ostracised, really.
Yeah. But now, 1 came out and 2 came out and 3 came out. And now, every single day, seemingly, it's not every single day, but, Bowman did a bit. I think it was 13 or 14. November the 13th, someone wrote on the Washington Post, why did it take 30 years for people to believe my story? And that's sort of the problem in itself.
Yeah.
November the 16th, new accuser. November the 17th, new accuser.
There was
November the
there was
18th.
a YouTube star, I think his name's Sam Peppers or something like that, but I don't know if you heard about this. This YouTube star like raped someone, and she just made a YouTube video about it. And now,
did?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Do you know who it is?
I believe that he was supporting somebody my girlfriend and her sister went to see live, like a couple of years ago. He raped somebody. Really?
Yeah, apparently. Let me just, I'm just going to Google this in case it's wrong. Sam Peppers rape. YouTube star Sam Peppers accused of raping several teenagers.
Oh, Jesus.
It's got upwards of 2 million subscribers. So I think basically, yeah, someone made a video on YouTube saying, like, Sam Peppers raped me. And that's the thing about, like, the internet, that's the thing about the media that we've got, is that you can't really escape from it. Like, this is the American version of the Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris, that whole scandal in the UK that happened really recently, where it turned out that a lot of our beloved celebrities were rapists as well, from like the 70s, from the same sort of era. So obviously that was, for some reason, I don't know why, that was a big problem back then. But I feel like nowadays, the stars of like the young generation now don't really have any way around like the transparency of things like YouTube and Twitter and stuff like that. Because you can just tell everyone, you can just say, like, this person's evil, and then people will see that.
It's scary, really, that was so commonplace, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. Like, and it seems like some sort of systemic problem, but I have no idea.
We joked about it for ages. What did I watch today? Anchorman. And you know, that's set in the 70s. And that basically had all the sort of sexual harassment that a lot of these people did and got in trouble for. And it was sort of, we all sort of laughed about it for a while, like, oh, the past was crazy, wasn't it? But I suppose the opposite side of that is, do you put today's standards of morality and ethics on actions of the past? Should you? Yes, probably, maybe. I don't know. I've not given it enough thought.
I mean, yeah, there shouldn't be like a statute of limitations when it comes to things like rape, I don't think. I think that no matter how long ago it happened...
Yeah, no, not rape. Undoubtedly not rape.
Like, yeah, I mean, anything... Not anything, like, you should let some things go, like, oh, that person called me a tosser in like, the 60s or whatever. You should probably let that grudge go and forgive them.
I think linguistically things change massively. Like, there are certain words, certain things that back then you could sort of throw around quite casually, but now you just wouldn't, and that's very acceptable.
That's true, yeah. Like, catcalling now is, like, really frowned upon, whereas back then it was not even thought of as being slightly bad in any way. It was like a normal thing to do.
The interesting part about these rumours as well is even all these people, there's like 10 people that you could say are relatively unknown people who, you know, encountered him when they were trying to get into the business, etc. But there are like 3 or 4 well-known people, you know, Janice Dickinson, the Hulk's wife, who have come out and said very, very similar things.
I heard her description of it, and it was pretty dark. She was like playing pool with him, and he offered her a drink that obviously he'd spiked, and she was like, oh, I don't drink, or I don't want it, or whatever. Yeah. And, he was like, oh, okay. And then she carried on playing pool, and he just came up behind her and grabbed her and, you know, assaulted her. And it's just like, I mean, I suppose you never really hear descriptions of things like that, but even that, to hear her description of it is like really dark. And to think that he's done that like a dozen times that we know of, it's crazy.
Interestingly as well, about a week ago, a guy that worked on The Cosby Show claimed that he was in charge of delivering payoffs to different women.
Really?
Yeah, in his words, he said it was a cover-up.
Whoa.
He said
so he would pay off people.
He claimed he stood guard outside Cosby's dressing room while the comedian said he was conducting interviews.
Whoa.
All supplied by an agency he had an agreement with.
Holy shit.
So that's scary, really.
Who is that guy?
His name is Scotty.
Just some dude.
Yeah, it's just an employee that worked there, well, isn't it?
You couldn't pay me enough money to stand guard, like, and pay people off. That's really complicit. He should be brought to justice as well somehow.
But if say you get a job now on, I don't know who the biggest comedian in the world is, if you get a job on Louis, for instance, you're just being a runner for Louis, and he says, I'm just interviewing people in my room, I don't want to be disturbed while you do it. I'm just getting a couple of models in for a scene I'm doing on the next episode. I just want to see who'll be the best, who I have the best chemistry with. I don't want to be disturbed while I do it. Just stand there. If you're a nobody, it's going to take some big balls. You can look back in hindsight and say, I wish I did question that. But if someone of that status just says, can you just do me a favour?
Yeah.
You're out the door if you go, fuck you, you're going to rape people in there.
Yeah, that's true. It's always easier to say what you would like to do.
Yeah.
Like, whenever it comes to anything to do with sexual assault, like, I feel like men and women are different when it comes to sexual assault because we have more testosterone, so we're more willing to fight. Like, if someone puts their dick in your mouth, what's the first thing you do? Probably just bite it down.
Yeah.
Whereas a woman, like, I don't know if that instinct is so ready, like, it's a bit scary. But then I don't know how I would react in that situation. And I don't know how I'd react if I was asked to be complicit either. I mean, I would like to say that if Louis C.K. ever did do that...
you can put anybody in that, but if you don't know for sure and you can't prove that something's happening, it's a very bold person to say, no, I'm not gonna be a part of your game, because of course they're just gonna go, what are you talking about? No, and then fire you. 5 years he's worked in the industry to try and get a job on the biggest show in the world at that point. It's gone.
Yeah, but I mean, it's difficult for me to say because I don't really care about. I'm not trying to get a job on the biggest show in the world, so it's difficult for me to say. Like, I don't know. Yeah, like you would be throwing away your dream, but then I don't know. If someone came out of that dressing room like makeup running down their face, crying and shit like that, or just drugged out or whatever, and I was asked to give them money and tell them don't talk about this, but I wasn't told exactly what was happening. I feel like A, I'd probably have a pretty good idea of what went down, and B, I would like to think that I just can't imagine any scenario where I'd be all right with that and be like, yeah, okay, whatever. But then people do, though. People have done all the time in like horrible situations. People have been complicit in all sorts of situations.
Well, if you look at like the Holocaust, if you look at real. That you actually turned me on to the book, that Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, by Viktor Frankl.
He talks about that a lot, about what things you'll do to survive and what things you'll do to just get through the day.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah, and he spoke about, because the SS did a big thing of employing certain prisoners to, watch over other prisoners, and they just became worse, he said, than the SS themselves because they were trying to show that they were better. They lose sight of who they are just to survive. Have you ever
heard of that Stanford prison experiment?
Yeah, where they shock them.
No, that's the Milgram experiment, but that's a similar one though. I was going to bring that up as well. But the Stanford one is they arranged like a mock prison in this school in like, I'm not sure when it was, the 70s or 80s or something like that. And they said half the students are guards.
I do know this one, yeah.
Yeah,
Philip Zimbardo, is that his name?
Yeah, Philip Zimbardo. And they had to cancel it because the students who were guards were like so violent and nasty.
It's power, isn't it?
Yeah. Power corrupts. But yeah, the Milgram one was similar, where they asked participants to give other participants electric shocks for no reason. And just the fact that they were like wearing a lab coat meant that people were like, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah,
it got to the point where the shocks were like they upped the voltage each time, and it got to the point where people would pretend to fall unconscious and stuff like that, and people would still do it.
Jesus,
crazy.
That's fucking incredible.
Yeah, but what do you reckon is going through Cosby's mind? I mean, I've got to assume that he's a psychopath.
Well, I was listening to Joey Diaz's podcast. He was talking about how Ferguson couldn't have come at a better time for Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
He said Bill Cosby just hiding out in a cave somewhere.
Yeah.
Just trying to break all his roofing making equipment. It is a joke to a certain extent. But, you know, the man's 77 years old. I think he's done now. I think there's very little coming back from this. Because even if nothing comes of this, nothing comes of what, the 16, 17, 19, however many women that have come forward and stated this against him, even if nothing comes against him, this is now massive public knowledge. This is always going to be hanging over his head. Yeah,
like nobody doesn't know this at this point. Even though it's been like a week, Bill Cosby's name is already pretty synonymous with this.
Oh, yeah, and I mean...
You think Cosby, you think rape now.
Especially for people of our generation. I've never watched a single episode of The Cosby Show, ever.
No, me neither.
I don't know if I've ever seen it even on the television. Like, I don't think it's even been...
I'm not sure if they've even played it in the UK.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a thing over here. I know him as a stand-up comedian. I've seen him on things, I've seen him in things, because I am a fan of comedy and I've sort of searched it out myself. But to a lot of people, especially outside America and of a certain age, he's now just that old black rapist comedian.
Yeah.
And once you get that label...
It must be different for American people who grew up watching his stuff, because they've had I imagine they've had such an idea of who he is, and that's now been ruined. Whereas I didn't really have a great idea of who he was to begin with.
Well, that's what we've seen as well.
Change my opinion is not that big a deal.
That's what we saw over here with Jimmy Savile, and again, it was slightly before our time, but he had a persona over here of, you know, being a bit eccentric and extravagant. But he turned out to be just very, very creepy and mentally disturbed.
And that was the shame about that, I suppose, is that all came out after he died. So justice couldn't be served, sort of thing. He sort of lived his entire life without that coming out. So people were pretty upset about that. Rolf Harris, though, isn't he... What's happening with him?
He's in prison, I think, isn't he?
Is he in prison now?
I believe he got a certain amount of time in prison.
Yeah.
Which is...
weird.
I think he's in Stafford prison for, 8 months or something.
8 months?
Yeah, it's not great. He has a job as a gardener.
Oh, does he?
In prison, and has lost a stone because
he's doing really well then.
Because he can't stand the prison food. Yeah. Oh. 84 years old.
Yeah, all these people are like right at the end of their lives now.
Which is sad, really, because they're done. Like, this is it. You're never going to do... I think he got charged with 12 indecent assaults on 4 girls as young as 7. I mean, really...
No.
I mean, really...
It's karma.
You should go down for quite a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Not when you're 84.
All I can hope for is that he dies in prison, really. If, like, he's not eating the prison food.
Yeah, I imagine he will.
Well, we'll see what happens.
It's sad, but yeah, I think Cosby is sort of done here. And I think his silence is very telling.
Yeah. It's just turning out that all celebrities from the 70s are rapists. That's what's happening.
But do you think... Here's a question for you. Do you think seeing this behaviour, and sort of, if you look at the BBC, for instance, a lot of these people that have been in trouble over here, a lot of these things happened, while working at the BBC.
Yeah.
But these things have obviously been seen by people, have been discussed about. Does that breed rape, if that makes sense? If you say to me, oh, yeah, I'm working here and this lovely blah, 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 and, it's fine because she's 17 and she's never going to do anything and I'm Billy fucking Big Bollocks. You could probably do that as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's the whole argument of, like, rape culture, isn't it? Like, if people think that rape is okay, then people who are predisposed to want to rape are more likely to do it.
Yeah,
I think that's probably a big part of what happened. Is they probably, like, within the BBC especially, they probably had a culture around sexual assault in the 70s where it was just okay and it was fine. And now we're seeing the fallout of that.
Yeah, in a big bad way. Yeah. It's all come crashing down on a lot of people.
Yeah.
And Bill Cosby is seemingly just another another one of these. I hope that something does come of it. I hope this isn't just sort of ignored for a while and he just drifts away and never says anything.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's going to come of it. He's off the network.
Yeah, he's not having the Cosby Show podcast.
Not anymore.
Not on TFCN.
No, that's gone. So I hope he's happy with himself, because that was going to kickstart a new career for Cos.
But if he did genuinely abuse 19 people, then I hope there's some kind of legal action that comes of this.
Yeah.
Because ruining his career is one thing, but is Bill fucking Cosby. He's got all the money he ever needs and he's 77. So, you know, that's not really going to do anything.